Well, in our first lesson, we talked about the two reasons for faith, the two reasons to believe. We talked about faith being good for your marriage, good for your life, good for society. But probably even more importantly for a skeptic, we talked about faith being true. And of course, if it is true, like Jesus claimed it was, well, then it's worth believing. Well, in this video, we're going to talk about the two sides of belief. And what I mean by that is, how does faith actually work? How does belief actually work? And there are two sides to this. And the one side, I think you'll really relate to if you're a skeptic. The one side is the intellectual side. It's the information. The first side of belief is having the right information. You know, there are some people who don't really care so much. Their faith is very simple. Maybe as a skeptic, you know somebody like this, somebody who just can easily believe. And you might even look at that person with a little skepticism. Like you say, well, that person doesn't really need all the proof that I need. But you know, their journey toward God is a little different than yours. For a skeptic, a lot like doubting Thomas, one of Jesus's disciples, a skeptic wants proof. And so it's good for you to want proof. That's the first side. Keep studying, keep reading the Bible, keep talking to people, keep investigating. But you know that you can't reason yourself to a relationship with God. It's not all about an intellectual exercise, and that's a good thing, because then God would be excluding people who weren't as smart as you. It's a good thing that there's more than intellect when it comes to faith. The second thing is this, it's what I call the right attitude. Well, Peter in Acts chapter 2 then is out preaching this message. He finds himself all of a sudden a teacher of God's word, this fisherman turned into a teacher, and he's telling everyone about who Jesus is. He's telling everyone about how Jesus died on the cross and then how he rose from the dead. And he ended his message like this. He said, "So let everyone in Israel know for certain that God has made this Jesus, whom you crucified, to be both Lord and Messiah." Now, if you're a skeptic, those words probably jump out at you because you say, well, that's exactly my problem. How can I know for certain that Jesus is who he says he is? How can I know after one sermon that this is true and that this is right? You know, so a skeptic would say, no, that doesn't make any sense. But look at what happens next. It says, Peter's words pierced their hearts, and they said to him and to the other apostles, "Brothers, what should we do?" And this is the point. This is how faith works. It's not just a head thing. It's also a heart thing. It says that they were cut to the heart. In other words, something was happening on a non-intellectual level. Now, a biblical word for that is the spiritual level. And I know if you're a skeptic, you're saying, well, that's very convenient for something to happen at a spiritual level. I'm not saying that you check out your mind at the door. I'm saying that with their minds and with their hearts, they received the message. So see, coming to faith isn't just about gathering a bunch of information. So be careful as you're pursuing God and as you're looking into this. Don't just think you're going to get there by reasoning your way to God. It's not just about reason. It's not just about intellect. It's also about coming to God with the right attitude. You know, in Foundations Truth 1, we say it like this, that we start by trusting Jesus. What that means is that at the end of the day, even if you're a skeptic, and it's harder for a skeptic to do than for someone else to do, but at the end of the day, you come to God and you say, I'm going to trust your perspective even above my perspective. I'm going to come to you on your terms, not on my terms. And this is hard for anyone to do, but it's especially hard for a skeptic to do. So many skeptics are just sort of stuck on their perspective. They say, how can I trust in this book that's been around for over 2,000 years? I mean, come on, that just seems arbitrary. That doesn't seem right. That seems silly. My response to that is, well, what's the alternative? You're going to trust your own perspective that's been around 30 or 40 or 50 years? I would much rather trust in something that has withstood the test of time than to just trust my own perspective and my own view of things. You know, the way we define sin in Foundations is sin is trusting and acting on your own opinions and feelings rather than trusting and acting on God's truth. So sin is all about elevating your perspective above God's perspective. Now, I know if you're a skeptic, you're not even sure there is a God. You're not even sure what you think about God's perspective, but just keep this in mind. If you're really going to find God, it's not just going to be because you reasoned your way to God. Yes, keep reading, keep studying, keep talking, keep investigating. But don't forget, it's not just a head thing, it's also a heart thing.